Hello and welcome to this demonstration of the EPR encounter record. This walkthrough is intended to familiarize you with our new problem-oriented clinical recording and review features. During the course of this overview video, we'll use a patient-based scenario to demonstrate the functionality available to clinicians. This innovative development within TrackCare focuses on linking clinical activities to each of the patient's problems, providing clinicians with an enhanced view of the patient's overall history and current health management status. Before we begin interacting with the patient entry, let's take a look at the encounter record screen. This screen will act as the clinician's main activity hub for recording and linking together clinical information during the patient's visit. At the top of the screen, the user can see the usual patient identification banner. There are three main areas within the encounter record: the entry type selection and related actions on the left. On the right, there is a list of the patient's problems, access to the timeline, and other relevant information that is available in the EPR. And finally, the clinical record entry itself is in the center. The entry type selection allows the user to select an activity, and a customizable list of actions will then appear for that activity. Completing these actions implicitly links them to the encounter record. The right side provides a view similar to the EPR, and information appears in these lists as it becomes entered into TrackCare through other clinical activities. The clinical record displays some simple details at the top of the screen and then provides a number of tabs that can be used to filter for entries. Clicking these tabs will show the various entries that match the filter, but a search functionality may also be used to locate specific phrases. Below this is the entry itself, either one entered previously, which may be locked and uneditable, or the entry in progress, which would be in an unlocked state. The entry shows the date, time, and care provider who started it, and the various actions that took place during this encounter. Below each entry, a care provider may create additional notes using the inline editor. Now let's explore how a clinician will attend to a patient using the encounter record screen. For this, we will use the example of a 27-year-old male who attends emergency department with shortness of breath. This patient has already been triaged by a nurse and is waiting for the doctor to see him. The doctor may log into TrackCare and select the patient from the floor plan. Then, selecting the encounter record menu, the doctor might proceed to read the triage details from the Nurse Entries tab. The doctor is interested in the patient's new and existing health problems. A health problem is anything that is of concern to the patient or the care provider. Some of these problems may have been recorded during previous encounters and could be ongoing, while the patient may now also be experiencing new problems. What is important to note is that problems may persist across multiple encounters, or they may be short issues that are contained only to the current visit. Since this patient has no listed problems that relate to his current shortness of breath, the doctor might proceed to discuss any current problems with him. Accessing the timeline screen will provide the clinician an at-a-glance view of the patient's health history. Any prior and ongoing health issues that have been recorded in TrackCare will be displayed here, along with an indication of the duration and the type of interaction that occurred. As you can see in our sample, the timeline will provide zooming in on particular time periods and the ability to filter for various types of problems and interactions. This screen is currently still in development. The doctor now wishes to start documenting this encounter, so they begin an encounter record type of ED admission from the available selections. There are a number of predefined actions that the doctor can now take to work through this encounter type, beginning with the reason for encounter. In this case, the reason for this patient's visit is his shortness of breath, so this is recorded using the problems component. As you may notice, this component supports the SNOMED CT terminology, along with the ability to display the preferred SNOMED term and then refine it appropriately. Other terminologies that will also be supported by this component are ICD-10 and the ICPC-2 terminology commonly used in primary care. A new feature included with the encounter record will show the doctor's most often used terminology selections at the top of the selection list. They also have the usual ability to easily search for terms with predictive lookup functionality. As the doctor works through this component, they can set a number of attributes about the problem, including the site, laterality, severity, its onset and duration, and the importance of the problem to this encounter. For example, the patient's shortness of breath will here be marked as the chief complaint. This presentation may end up being a continuing issue for this patient. For example, shortness of breath when he climbs stairs. So in this case, the doctor may recognize it as something that needs to be labelled as a problem. Once these details are entered and updated, they are recorded as an entry into the encounter. A natural language text representation of the selected fields is displayed, making it more friendly to read and understand. This can be followed by any further comments that the doctor chooses to write. Notice also that the patient's complaint has been linked to this encounter and added to the current problems list on the right-hand side of the screen. This makes it easy for the clinician to access ongoing problems and identify that they are associated with different encounters. When a patient presents, they may pass through certain phases in the management of their care. For example, being triaged, admitted to ED, discharged, and then returning later for an outpatient appointment. All these may relate to a problem, but may occur as discrete activities. These activities are shown within the encounter record as entry types. It's important that the actions available to the clinician are relevant to their current activity. The selected entry type defines which relevant actions are available. These actions can appear in a sequence that usually occurs for the activity, or may be structured into SOAP form as shown here. Continuing with this scenario, the doctor now decides that a blood test will assist diagnosis of the problem. Ordering tests simply appears as one of the available actions, which then proceeds to load the familiar TrackCare ordering screen. Once the order is entered, it will be recorded on the entry in natural language text form. Now the doctor proceeds to perform a review of systems on this patient using the new ROS component. This component makes it quick to describe positive or negative signs and symptoms against each body area simply by using mouse clicks. For this patient, the doctor works through the general, nose, respiratory, and cardiovascular categories, marking responses and observations as they go. Another opportunity for further notes can be added at the bottom once the Apply button is selected. This process also results in a natural language representation of what was selected. The doctor found that when they attempted to insert a cannula for the blood test, access to the patient's veins was quite difficult. The doctor would now like to take note of that fact for the benefit of completeness. Now the doctor continues recording some of the background behind the patient's current shortness of breath. noting that the patient has a family history of asthma and a social history as a smoker. There appears to be a mistake entered in the review of systems, so the doctor can access that record again to make a correction by using the Edit icon. If the doctor now receives an urgent request to see another patient, they could leave the current entry for this patient open and editable, or set it to locked. When the doctor visits the second patient, they will select the patient from the floor plan and read the triage entry, noting that the nurse has recorded chest pain. This might be related to the patient's ongoing cardiac problem that is shown in the problems list. The doctor proceeds through a similar process to the last patient, recording the reason for encounter as chest pain, marking it as the chief complaint, but not making this a problem just yet. A chest pain questionnaire may need to be completed at this point to provide some more preliminary assessment. Since the doctor selected chest pain as the chief complaint, the system has offered the chest pain questionnaire. Once the doctor selects this, they may now proceed to interview the patient about their chest pain and complete the questionnaire. With the questionnaire completed, the results can again be viewed on the record in a natural language form. Since the doctor is now confident that the patient's chest pain is related to their existing cardiac condition, it makes sense to associate this entry to the existing problem. The link is made by dragging and dropping the problem onto the entry header. The doctor will eventually return to the first patient, the 27-year-old male who presented with shortness of breath. This patient's entry is now reopened. A result for the blood test has been returned, and it can be associated with the entry. With this information, the doctor may now be in a position to provide a diagnosis. The problem that was shortness of breath can be converted into a diagnosis of asthma by now updating some fields on the problem screen. These indicate the status of the diagnosis and whether it was identified by the person creating the entry. Having marked these fields, TrackCare will now create the diagnosis of asthma for this encounter. Other activities, such as a physical examination of the patient, may also be triggered. The physical examination is currently only available as a sample screen within this demonstration. To complete this demonstration of the new encounter record, it is interesting to see how the doctor can locate other relevant entries. In this case, the doctor is seeking any other encounter entries that relate to the patient's breathing. One way for the doctor to do this would be to use the filter tabs at the top of the entry to locate other relevant entries. Other care providers can also see this entry, but it is marked with a coloured bar to indicate that it is currently active. The doctor may also perform a search using a relevant search term, such as breath, in the search box. At the moment, this returns any entries matching this term. However, in future, we envisage that InterSystems iKnow technology will provide powerful conceptual search capabilities. Enjoy using the new encounter record. We look forward to your feedback.